Please welcome the director of Saint Laurent, Bertrand Bonello. And to help us with translation, if needed, is Nicholas Elliott. I'll start with a few questions before opening it up to you. So, Bertrand, welcome, first of all.
Thank you very much.
It's a real pleasure to have you at the festival for the first time. I think for those of us who know your work, the idea of a biopic is maybe a strange project for you. Not that I would really consider this a typical biopic. Could you say a little bit about what drew you to Saint Laurent in the first place and deciding to make this film?
It's not my idea, in fact. There are two French producers called Altmaier brothers, and I think they had the idea of making a film about Yves Saint Laurent for a few years, and they were searching for a director. And 3 years ago, they came out of my last film, which was released here under the title of House of Pleasures.
Yeah.
And they saw possible links between this kind of aesthetic and Yves Saint Laurent. So they came to me and asked me if I was interested by the subject. It's true that the first reaction for me was a little, I wasn't so sure because, as you said, the biopic is not my type of films. But very quickly I changed my mind. And the great luck is that there was nothing, there was no script, no books. I was very free to do what I want. So my first work was to make the film as personal as possible.
Why did you choose to focus on this period? And also, why did you choose to start the film with Saint Laurent in a way already Saint Laurent? I mean, the film actually dispenses with the whole biopic tradition of showing how somebody got to become who they are.
The first thing I was thinking about is what is going to be my point of view. Problems sometimes in biopics is they don't have point of view because it's only events. So I didn't want to show how Saint Laurent became Saint Laurent, but I was much more interested to show what it costs Saint Laurent to be Saint Laurent every day. So I decided to start with Saint Laurent already star, already famous, and I can't treat his whole life. It's too long, and if you want to treat everything, you don't treat nothing, because you go too fast. So the 10 years I chose, 67, 76, are for me the most crazy, the richest, and I think you have everything within these 10 years. In 67, you still have a kind of young Saint Laurent, and in 76, even if Yves is only 40, you already guess what is going to be later, And in terms of fashion, also, I think you have everything you can dream about Saint Laurent style. All his creation, his inventions, And I think the last reason is I was very interested in this period, especially in Paris, in France. It's a very fascinating and crazy period.
Your previous film, which you mentioned, La Polonie, released here as House of Pleasures, was a film that was set on, I guess, a cusp of an era, the turn of the 19th century. Do you see this also as the film about the end of an era?
Yeah, I think there are very many links between the two pictures, and this is one of them. I'm always very moved by a world that ends. So in House of Pleasures, it was the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, which is a huge, revolution. And in Saint Laurent, it's the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s, which is a revolution also. And how do you say le passage de l'artisanat à l'industrie?
The passage from craft to industry.
Which is something very important for me to show.
I want to ask you, I guess, two casting questions. Could you say a little bit about Gaspard Ulliel as Saint Laurent, and also, of course, Helmut Berger as the old Saint Laurent.
I'm going to start by Helmut, because the idea came first. When with Thomas Bidguin, the co-writer, we were starting to write the script. We were writing we were writing the treatment, on one page. So first act, second act, third act, And third act, we wrote, okay, 1989, we go on the flash forward. And one of the important ideas is to show that Saint Laurent was somewhere else, Even his body is not the same, he is someone else. And we took it literally, someone else, we're going to change actors. I didn't want to use the makeup on Gaspard. It's something I don't really like. I always see on the screen, the work of the makeup artist and not the actor anymore. So I really like this change of body, And the image we had very quickly in our mind is Helmut Berger. It's a flash, because I think in the 70s I had these souvenirs of pictures of Helmut and pictures of Yves, quite similar. And Helmut, as much as Yves had a lot of drugs and alcohol, and his body became heavy, and there's something very moving in showing that. So we can say it's a screenplay idea more than a casting idea, the change of actor. As for Gaspard, of course, it's the main point. When I was saying around me, I'm preparing a film about Saint Laurent, everyone told me Gaspard Ulliel, Gaspard Ulliel, Gaspard Ulliel, and because it's true, there is a very strong resemblance. But I didn't want to stop on that, it's not enough for me. So I met Gaspard, but I met like 20 other actors. We made some tests, long tests. And what I loved about Gaspard is that, I think I'm not filming Yves Saint Laurent. I'm filming, of course, the actor. I'm filming Gaspard. As well, I'm not filming Pierre Berger, but Jérémy Régnier. So you have to fall in love with your actor, not only with the character he's doing. And Gaspard and I had the same idea that the person the character we wanted to create had to be like 50% of Saint Laurent and 50% of Gaspard. I wanted something of him, So it's not only an imitation, but it's something more incarnated.
To come back to Helmut Berger, I'm wondering if it was in any way because Visconti was someone you had in mind while thinking about this film, or thinking about the figure of Saint Laurent?
But I think Yves Saint Laurent is a Viscontian character, There are a lot of bridges between the two. They both share the love of beauty. They both share the love of Proust. They both share many things. So through Saint Laurent, yes, I guess I thought about Visconti quite a lot.
So of the of the two Saint Laurent films that have come out, this is the one that was made without the participation of Pierre Berger and the foundation. Could you talk a bit about what that meant for you in terms of recreating, just the labor that went into not having certain access that might have helped?
Yeah, it's true we didn't have access to any archives or any dresses, but now the real Yves Saint Laurent dresses, there are museum pieces, so it's very difficult to manipulate them anyway. So it wasn't too much a problem that we didn't have access to them. So we had to recreate an atelier de couture.
A sewing workshop.
Vraiment un atelier de couture à la manière de...
Truly a sewing workshop in the style of Saint Laurent.
And we had like a 20 couturières.
Seamstresses.
Thank you. And they made exactly as it used to be made, the two collections that you saw in the film. But for me, the advantage, it makes the the clothes very living. You know, it's not something that comes from a museum. It's very alive.
Can you talk a bit about the structure of the film and also the sense of time in the film, which, again, another connection to, I think, House of Pleasures, which is just a very fluid sense of time. The film proceeds more or less chronologically, but then this time becomes much more fluid and slippery in the last hour of the film.
Yeah, the first two parts of the film are quite chronologic, and then I wanted that the third part, at the moment when Helmut arrives, we really approach Yves so much that we're almost in his head. And I wanted the idea of the time to explode, you know? Like if you come into a room and there are mirrors everywhere, and each mirror, you know, is a part of yourself. The film at that moment becomes quite mental and much more affective than in the beginning. I wanted the film to have a kind of arc, so I used the time for that.
I guess just one last question for me before I open it up. I'd like you to talk a bit about music. I guess always plays a very important part in your films. You're a musician as well and composed the score. So music on several levels, the score of the film which you compose, but also the use of opera and classical and also of contemporary pop music.
It's true that I'm very close from music because I'm a musician much before I was a movie maker, and it's important to me that when you start writing a scene or a film, I want to have in mind the sound of the film, not only, you know, the images or the dialogues, but the sound. The sound, it's not only music, it's really the whole sound. And I decided very early for this film that it would be basically split into two kinds of music. Soul music from the 70s and opera. And also that all the music would come from inside the scenes, you know, not much score, but inside the scenes. Which I like on that, what I like on that is that the spectator and the characters are on the same level of emotion to the music. And then I realized during the editing that these two kind of music were not enough. And I added some music I composed, more electronic, in the way of these years, like 74, 75. So, you know, it's like will be more equilibrated.
All right, we'll take some questions. I think there are mics being handed out.
It's a hard film to watch, and a very good one, but it's hard to see this life. My question has to do with, essentially, what do you think the relationship between Pierre and Yves Saint Laurent was, and what was the significance of the Liberation newsroom's warmth towards him?
It's a hard film to watch, you said. Yeah, I agree, because it's a film also about a very depressed man, a very melancholic man. The relationship between Pierre and Yves, when I start the movie, it's in '67, and Pierre and Yves met in '58, I guess. So when the film starts, they're together for 8 years, and the house YSL is created for 5 years. So it's not my main, you know, subject, but I can try to answer. I think it's 50 years of life together, with beautiful moments and terrible moments. I think some people that knew them very well that I met, they told me they're like monsters with two heads, and I like this image because I think it's quite right. You know, it's not the tough money guy and the fragile creator. It's more complicated than that, and they really found each other to create something very strong. You know, and what's the last question? I tried to take away from the film all the sentences, you know, that are sometimes in biopics, like Eve changes the woman, all this kind of stuff that I found a little heavy. But at the same time, I thought they were important, you know, that they should be said at one moment. So I used the exercise of the necrology?
An obituary.
To put all this, you know, it's something that intrigues me. You know, you're a journalist. You hear at 4 o'clock that someone important dies, and you have to give your paper at 6. You have 2 hours to resume his life. You know, so that's basically the sense of this sequence.
Two things. First, could you talk about your research? And the second thing about the dog. That scene was very powerful, the dog dying. I'd love to know how you did that.
Okay, start by the second. The dog is very fine now. He's living in the countryside. He's very, very happy. And we had a very good doctor. And now, for the dog, it's true that Yves had this kind of dog. Then when the dog died, he took another, the same, and called him Mujik 2, and then Mujik 3, and Mujik 4. It's something that, it says something about his craziness, you know, his obsession. So, of course, from this real element, I have to create something because the film is full of invention. It's not only, you know, and I like the idea of the dog eating pills because it's, at the same time, quite funny and totally pathetic, you know. About the research, I've made a lot of research. But for me, the point of doing research is the best thing to get rid of it, you know, to take some freedom, you know. I prefer to take freedom when I know where the reality is. So that's why I make so much research.
There's a long scene that doesn't have Yves Saint Laurent in it, and that is the business meeting, where I think I've never seen anything like it or actually heard anything like it, how you were using language, the two languages and the interpreter overlapping. It becomes something else than the content. And we look at the patterns of the ties, and we half listen. So could you talk about this fascinating scene?
Yes, sure. It was a very important scene for me. On the first draft of the script, there were many informations about economy, you know. And at one moment, I say, this is too much informative. Let's try to make one huge moment, you know. And Eve is not in there, but at the same time, it talks about Eve. And the idea of this sequence was to try there is quite an easy an enjeu.
The stakes.
An easy stakes. But I wanted the spectator to look at some people, you know, you don't always understand what they say, but you say, I don't understand, but they do understand what they're doing, you know, something very technical. And I wanted to do the scene, which is only talking, like an action movie, you know. And of course, the interpreter, which is quite, now people, basically everyone, you know, talks good English, but in the 70s, someone like Pierre Berger, yes, he don't speak English. So I like the idea to have the interpreter because it gives some tension on the scene, you know. Even if you lose the sense, you have a general feeling of something quite tense. And it took me like 9 days to write the scene. It was very, very long and very precise. Even me now, I'm not sure I understand what's happening, you know, but I know it's right.
Thank you. I just wanted to say this was an incredible film. There were so many different moments that spoke to so many different emotions, and on the whole, it's just overwhelming in the best possible way. But I wanted to ask you about a very specific scene, and to me, it feels like the heart of the entire film. And I think it is the last time that we see Eve working one-on-one with a customer, patron, friend, whatever, when the woman is trying on the suit and she's worried that it looks too masculine. And there's just this brief, you know, it's 2 minutes or so of him working with his like two highest, most important assistants, you know, finding how this woman fits into this dress. And it's an absolutely electrifying sequence. And I was just sort of, is that based on, you know, any sort of record, or is that just something that you came up with to sort of harness the emotion of that experience for people?
Oh, thank you very much. You know, there is this kind of, on books or on Wikipedia or on everything, you always hear Eve changes the woman, you know, which is something quite theoretical. So I tried to do a scene that qui incarnerait cette idée.
A scene that would embody this idea.
And I think one of my favorite film of all time is Vertigo. And I wanted to do a kind of Vertigo in 2 minutes, you know. And beside that, it's the actress, Valeria, she don't change anything about, you know, her costume from the beginning to the end of the scene. It's just the look of the genius on her. And little by little, she feels good because she's looked by him, you know. It's really the meaning of this scene. And it's this, as I told you, this general idea that we always hear is Eve changes the woman. I made this sequence for that.
Time for a couple more questions. I see hands. Hold on, wait for the microphone.
You're very open with the homosexuality in Yves' life. Their orgies, their kisses with exchanges of pills. Did you wonder how much you were going to show or how much of the orgies you were going to show? And could you have made this film 10 years earlier or 20 years earlier with the same openness?
Paradoxically, the film is very chaste.
Because you don't see anything, you know, really. It's a lot.
A lot is off-screen.
But I was very interested in the atmosphere much more than in 6 things that there are not in the film. About homosexuality, actually I didn't think a lot about it because I don't think it's a subject for Yves or Pierre. What I mean by that, it would be a subject if it was like homosexuality versus heterosexuality or the discovery of, you know, this would be a subject, but not in this film, not with them. I wrote the scenes exactly like if they were for 2 women or a man and a woman. The thing I was really, I worked a lot was the period, the atmosphere of the period. Of course, it's in the 70s, so it's before the AIDS and before the crisis, and you know, it's very much more. Il y a beaucoup plus de légèreté et d'insouciance.
There was much more lightness and freedom.
And that's what I tried to show with these sequences.
This is a simple question. Has Carl seen the film, and does he have any feedback? And the larger question is, what actually is Jacques' role in this film?
Carl, he sends message every 2 weeks because he wants to see the film. He wanted to come to Cannes, and then he cancelled. Then he wanted to a private screening, then he cancelled. Then he wanted to come at the avant-première in Paris, then he cancels. Carl is too busy. You know, he's 83 and he's working night and day. I don't know how he makes it, but he's too busy. But he's very curious. He's very curious because Jacques has really been the big love of his life. So he was, I guess, anxious of how I was showing him. For me, Jacques de Bachère is a kind of character that don't exist anymore these days. That's what I really liked. It's like
He's like a black star.
Thank you. And someone that has no past and no future, only present time. And I liked this idea and this character. That's why I focused a lot on him on the film. But beside that, I think on the script it was a little smaller. But when we were shooting, I thought all the sequences between Louis Garrel and Gaspard were so beautiful. Something really happened between the two actors, you know, a lot of grace. So I extended the scene because, you know, a director is a vampire. You know, if you see something good, you just...
Okay, great. Thank you all for coming, and Bertrand, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.